Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
That you have, I know you can see this is I.E. me in the house right now. And you know, I know every time I say good morning, some of you ask me, Larry, what's that morning? And I always love to say this when I see those smiles out there. I think the sun is coming up no matter what time of day it is. Hey, thank you for being back with us. Carolyn, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go kind of straight into this because this is a very important young lady that we have here on the show today with a wonderful message. And something that I think that we all going to kind of agree upon that we really need a lot of. And the reason I say that, we're looking at the news and you're looking at the elections coming up and we're looking at the Donald Trumps that's stirring up the stuff out there in the Republican parties, and then we're looking at what's happening with the Hillary Clinton and her constituents out there as we move forward and closer to the next election coming up, and then looking at the recent violence that we're seeing in the news. It's getting really, really, really terrible out there. And I'm going to take it back. I'm not going to say it's getting terrible, but I think a big light is being shined on it. And the young ladies that are here today will help me with that a little bit more. And where we got our president is working on the Iran nuclear situation with Israel in the Middle East down there, and the recent police shooting in Tennessee. It's never a good thing to hear about an officer being shot down, and then the recent movie killings and stuff. So right now, I think what we are in a point in time in the country that we need dialogue, and we must start to sit down and have dialogue, both politically, spiritually, mentally, and from the roots of the community to the ivory tower to the big house. And I think we have someone here today that is going to help us get into this dialogue conversation and see a little bit more and more about how we can move forward by sitting down and having wonderful conversation with each other. This young lady is now, look, guys, now you know I normally would mess up a name, but I got this one. It's Avis Ridley Thomas. Yes. In the house. Did I get that right? I got it right. And Carolyn and Miss Carolyn Wilkins, thank you for putting us together today. You and Miss Avis had the floor here before, had the mics here before. You guys did such a wonderful job, and just thank you for putting it all back together so that I can be included.
Okay, well, we're glad you're included this time.
That's what I'm talking about.
I want to introduce you all to Avis Ridley Thomas. She's the founder and executive director of Days of Dialogue. And I've been involved in working with her for several years now in both of the programs that are part of the Institute for Nonviolence Los Angeles. And we're going to be doing a program that's going to be over the next year, but I want to just first say a little bit about it. In an effort to ensure constructive civic engagement around the difficult issue of police violence, the Institute for Nonviolence in Los Angeles, through its Days of Dialogue program, is planning large-scale dialogues throughout Los Angeles County on the future of policing. It's also marking the 50th anniversary of the Watts Rebellion. So, what we're going to talk about today is what is ahead of us, what's going to begin August the 10th, actually, and continue on as a year-long effort. So let me reintroduce Avis Ridley Thomas.
Yay! So tell me a little bit about the program and the vision. Tell me a little bit about the vision.
Okay. Well, when I established the Los Angeles City Attorney's Dispute Resolution Program, our mission was a mediator on every block. What I was able to see in police reports that I read every day was that there was a pattern to assaults, to batteries, and to many murders. And that pattern in the police report, this was just reading, having the responsibility of reading those all day to find out who I provide services for in that capacity in the Victim Witness Assistance Program. That pattern was that an incident had occurred, and the police did not feel as if they were appropriate interveners to help resolve the dispute until a crime was committed. So I thought that was a huge opportunity to get involved in all of these terrible situations that I was coming in as a victim witness assistance person to try to make someone whole after they had been injured, time off work, lost a family member. We had funeral and burial expenses. And there was nobody who thought it appropriate to intervene and give the people the option of trying to resolve the dispute. Well, before we were funded, there had been a 10-year effort by mediators throughout the state of California to establish the California Dispute Resolution Programs Act of 1986. So they had been fighting
10 years.
10 years before. That's before I came on the scene. And they had finally gotten it through the state legislature and the governor, and they had to negotiate to be sure that this was not an unfunded mandate. This was not a mandate that they had, that people were required to participate in if they didn't believe it was appropriate for their particular community. So what it allowed for the Dispute Resolution Programs Act is when people file civil disputes, a portion of those funds you pay when you file those first papers. I don't know, a couple of $100, I think. So a portion of that would go to dispute resolution programs if your county board of supervisors opted into the program. If they decided they wanted to take advantage of it, they would collect those funds to go into the dispute resolution program. So there was this temporary commission put in place to establish all of the requirements for that program. And what I liked most about it in working with victims of violent crimes is that it required you to train community members to use public facilities to help people to resolve everyday disputes. And so I started off with just a small class, and the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, they did our trainings initially. And remember, our mission was a mediator on every block. And before I knew it, I had 1,000 mediators trained. Wow. That was when I turned around and looked to see what we had done. So in 1995, when the O.J. Simpson criminal trial and the Million Man March occurred, my husband, who was city council person at that time, called together our prophetic leaders, our community leaders, who, you know, they are always hopeful. And they were down at this time because they could feel tension in the air. And one really asserted that day. He said, you know what we need? We need a day of dialogue. Wow. And I knew I had these 1,000 mediators. We could deliver that through the city attorney's dispute resolution program. We had 65 locations that day from 7:30 a.m. till late at night. We were covered by national news. And then it was really the facilitators who would not let that day be only a day of dialogue. We didn't expect to establish an institution, and now this is 20 years, right, from 1995. But the mediators and facilitators said, no, every time, we just thought we cannot do this another time. There was another issue that emerged, So that was, the first was Days of Dialogue on Race Relations, and there became Days of Dialogue on Mental Illness, on stopping violence, on predatory lending, on affirmative action, on the post 9/11. So we have so many subjects that we have covered over these 20 years. And what emerged at this time was the need. This actually came from a law enforcement officer who said, we need to talk about our future. We know all these terrible things have happened,
Yes.
Involving police and members of our community, but we really need to focus on what we're going to do in the future. So that's where the title came from for this series.
Let me ask you a question for some of my listeners, and because I'm familiar with your work to a degree. Introduce yourself. How did you get into this? What got Avis to this point?
The thing that motivated Avis is that I could see in those same police reports that in our community, that is in the predominantly Black community where I was raised, that we needed opportunities to help resolve disputes. We casually say things to our children. I brought you here, I will take you out. And we needed other ways of doing things because we were reinforcing a level of violence that it does not have to be. And we are doing harm to one another. Because we think that there are not effective ways of handling problems in other ways. And I knew that there were. I didn't know what they were. I honestly did not know.
You just were open to the possibilities.
I knew that there had to be something
else, yes.
That our families could be functioning differently, our community differently, our city differently. The police told me when I was writing that initial proposal that there were 3 million requests for service a year, and that they thought about half of those were appropriate for mediation instead of their intervention. So can you imagine needing half the police officers that we have in Los Angeles? That would be tremendous for all of us if people would decide other ways of resolving the disputes.
And then do you think that, this is more of a question, do you think that there is a lack of understanding the resources that is available out there?
No doubt about it. That was always the biggest challenge, to get the word out. I still remember one man saying to me, there were about 35 people at this particular session where I was giving a presentation one evening, and he said, I know City Hall, and I know what goes on down there, and I've never heard of you. So I said, okay, we are in a city of what at the time? I said, what is it, 3 million or something in Los Angeles? I said, so there are about 35 people here. It's going to take me a little while to get around to everybody.
Yes.
So I'm at it every day, though, and so I'm doing the best I can. Can you help? Can you help get the word out? And so he committed to do that. But that was always the challenge. When we had resources to purchase airtime, we would do that, and people would use it and tell us, they'd never heard of it. What a wonderful thing. Yes, it was absolutely wonderful. But we just have to find every way possible to ensure that people know what is available. And this is available.
I love that because being in the marketing industry for so many years, and I know how hard it is to brand something. It's all about branding it and getting it out there where it's just so familiar to everybody. And that takes work and actually word of mouth. But it also takes those of us that comes to the table to walk away and come back and bring something to the table, not just walk away and take things from the table.
Yes.
And the more we come to the table and add to that, and I think the word will because good work does not go unheard of. I mean, as long as you're out there pounding the pavement, people will hear about you.
I agree. I agree. It may take a little while, but I'm not worried about that because I think even our president negotiating that deal is a demonstration that there is another way of resolving disputes that we
That
have.
was the very reason I brought up the Iran deal in my opening statement here, because I know the dialogue that you were talking about, and then now we are seeing it at its highest level.
That's right.
But then we are seeing it challenged at its highest level.
I have to tell you, I want to tell you the challenges that people would present to us. We'd offer the opportunity for them to resolve the dispute. And what they would always say, or often say, is that, I'm a reasonable person. But those folks that I'm disagreeing with, they are not at all prepared to do it. And so we would tell them, that's okay. Why don't you let us make the request? We're third-party neutrals. We'll make the request and see. And what they may not have known is that we knew if we could get the parties to the table, that there was almost a 100% opportunity to get that dispute resolved, whatever it was.
Give us an example of a
there were so many
dispute.
disputes. Oh, there was the one that I appreciated most involving a family was one that there was a sister and brother, and they were in disagreement over the care of the mom and the mom's resources. So mom's still alive, brother and sister going at it. Mom prefers sister as the administrator because brother had not assumed the responsibilities of an adult. He had lived in mom's house. He was now 50 years old, had not had a job of his own. He was an actor here in Hollywood.
Yes.
And, sister had been working, had a family and all this, and mom put all the financial responsibilities in her hand. And she was not going to easily continue supporting 50-year-old brother. That dispute, and the sister had to come down from Northern California to meet. There were 8 sessions. And then she wanted to know, this had gone so well as far as she was concerned. They were able to resolve mom's care, and the brother trying to, assume some responsibility for his own livelihood. And she was so happy, and she came through the office saying, who established this program? I need to find that person and thank that person, so that one warmed my heart. But that was 8
And now that's
sessions.
an excellent story there, because there's so much of that going on out there.
Well, every conceivable dispute. So, I just think of my own family, about everything, that goes on in a family, that if we can sit down for a moment, and just give it a couple of ground rules, that we'll respect each other in the conversation. We'll allow one another the opportunity to fully express him or herself, that we will attempt to resolve the dispute as opposed to attempting to not resolve it and just keep the drama going, just some basic rules.
I want to just add a couple of things before we move into the conversation about the actual days of dialogue. One of the programs, the other program that is under the Institute for Nonviolence is called Peer Mediation. And it's a program I've been working with for the last 3 years with Avis Ridley Thomas. And it's amazing because we are in the middle schools and elementary schools of LAUSD. And to take the training so that these young students can learn how to sit down and have a conversation about somebody taking a basketball, about bullying, about conversation with a teacher that may not be resolved. There are just all sorts of situations where young people are being trained on how to have the language to express themselves. And one of the most interesting things I found is that most of us don't know how to say what's wrong. We just get mad and
we get angry
we
and
get
want to
angry
lash out.
and yes, we lash out, but we don't even know how to express what happened, why it happened, and to learn and to teach them how to take the time to listen to the other person. And so I just applaud the efforts, and I am so excited to be a part of an organization that's helping children to think differently so that they don't wind up in a violent situation when they can handle it before they get there. So I am interested in having us have a conversation about Days of Dialogue because it's an amazing series of programs that are going to be in the community. And Avis, we'd like you to talk a little bit about that, what this Future of Policing program is about, the work that's been done to pull it together. We've had steering committee meetings, which included police officers, fire department, community activists, leaders, negotiators. Tell us more.
Well, our steering committee is about 30 different organizations. And that's everybody who'll come to the table. So in having gotten that training in the city attorney's dispute resolution program, my experience is you put out the call and people come running because they can see that we don't have to proceed in the way that things have gone in the past on these problems. And so the steering committee members, just representing the ACLU, the NAACP, LAPD, the fire department, just so many community-based organizations that you wouldn't even know their names if I said them, but they're out there slugging away trying to make a better world. And so they come to be a part of it too. They want to be a part. We want to have them included in the effort.
In the dialogue, is there some point of the dialogue, especially dealing with our policemen and our regular citizens, and as you and I talked about off the air a little bit of there, that it's in the African American community we probably taking the brunt of the abuse, but it seems to be spreading across all racial barriers now. And what is the dialogue about? Just equal justice, just justice.
Yes,
I mean,
for everybody. Everybody. So now each group or representatives from groups may take a particular approach. So we have, for example, the Korean American community who feel like there are particular issues that they really want to talk about to address them. Think about victims of domestic violence or women, for example. And so we have Peace Over Violence, and they wanted us to be sure that we raise questions related to that. What about people with mental illness who really do
need a voice?
That I'm telling you at the table. So we raise those issues, and then any other characteristics in our questions that you think. What do you think is important that we talk about?
Bring it to the table.
That's right. So whatever characteristics you believe impact how you are served by police and what police officers need to take into consideration, raise those issues here, and let's see what we do.
Well, one of the things that I see, I'm bouncing just a little bit, but I think it'll fit in here. One of the things that I see with this dialogue, and then the intervention and solving family problems and so on and so forth, and I found in my own experience that oftentimes poor inner city, whether they're Hispanics or African Americans or whomever, they tend to use the police department to solve their arguments. It doesn't necessarily have to be domestic violence. It could be an argument over a phone bill. It could be an argument over
$5. I have to tell you, I remember an intense argument over $5.
And then they're ready to call the police out.
It was escalating. So Fortunately, these women didn't let that escalate to the point of violence. But yes, you are right. That it doesn't even matter the dispute. That's what I loved about the city attorney's dispute resolution program. Even if it hadn't gotten to where I remember a mom contacting us once saying that her older children had moved out and she and her youngest had been doing fine. But now the older ones were in a bad financial situation, so they were having to come back home, and they were now trying to lord over the youngest one. And she couldn't have that. She said, we've been doing fine, he and I. And her question to me was, because she had gone around the city trying to find help, phone number to phone number, can you do something to help with that? And I said, yes, ma'am, we have somebody who specializes, and he did, in those kinds of disputes. And they were able to pull that family together and get that
I'd
resolved.
love to hear that, because I've seen in so many cases over the years that these, because not all of the time quite natural, but we're talking about young people, young parents, that is just young single mothers and dealing with the kids and
now let me assure you that when I looked at those police reports, age was not a factor in that kind of. I'm telling you, age was not the factor that I saw. I saw a whole lot of other things, but age was not the defining factor. I think it was a lack of understanding about the alternatives.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, but the kids. So when we talk to the kids in the schools now, you ask them how they resolve conflicts, and you see that they just don't know any other way. In fact, some parents have told them, you don't let this happen in that way. Yes. You make sure that person does not do this again, because you engage in violent behavior, or if you don't with them, you're gonna have to come back and answer to me.
Yes,
you know. So that's the teachers tell us that too. What do we do with students like that? Well, then we need to also train the parents.
No, there's no question about it.
Yeah. So I have to tell you, I did not see age as a factor. I saw a lot of interesting factors, but age
I love
was
the way you put it, interesting.
Because some people were used to running things. This was interesting to me, the mediator sometime. And it happened to be men who, some of them could not stop telling people what to do. You know, as a mediator, you provide guidance and support to get people to a place. But these few folks, they even tried. I saw them struggle with trying to. You see them making the effort. It was funny. But they couldn't do it. They didn't. I could. They were trying. We were trying to help them. So what I had to do for them when they finished the training is to put on their certificates of completion a little asterisk that yes, they had completed the training, but they had to be supervised by a staff member. And all of their mediation.
So you guys train mediators?
We train them with 40 hours of classroom training and 160 hours of supervised case handling, and they got a beautiful certificate of completion from the city attorney.
That's something very proud for
I am so proud of that, because by the time I finished, we had trained 2,000 community members. Remember I told you our mission was a mediator on every block, but it was 30 years, and 30 years was 30 years, so I had to retire.
Carolyn, why haven't I been in one of those training programs?
Well, because I'm trained. Yes.
So go ahead, Carolyn. You wanted to say something along this.
Well, I wanted to give an opportunity to really talk about what's going to happen on August the 10th and August the 11th, and following that, there's going to be a forum that's going to be done through a cable program. And if you go on futureofpolicing.org, you'll see more information about everything we're talking about. On August the 11th, we're going to have dialogues in quite a few different locations. I think we have 13?
Yes, I think you're right.
13 on the 11th itself, and they range from being at the Community Church Fellowship Hall in Los Angeles, Peace Over Violence on Wilshire Boulevard. We have the Korean organization KCCD and ACLU of Southern California doing a program at the Oriental Mission Church, St. Elmo Village, has a program. Youth Justice Coalition in Inglewood is doing a program in the afternoon from 2 to 5. There's also programs at fire stations and at police locations. So if you go on the website, you'll get to see where these 13 locations are. And I wanted to just share what they really are. It's sitting around a table. So there will be a facilitator, either 1 or 2 at a table, and 8 other people at the table. We try not to have more than 10 people. And they'll, depending on the size of the location, they're able to accommodate anywhere from 50 to 150 people. So those who come to the center on at the appointed time will sit at a table. They'll be guided. There's no facilitator that's there to talk over them. It's a time for each one to lend their own voice. And I've done these many times, and I'm always amazed because what I find is that everybody doesn't think like me, that people have different opinions, that their perspective may be completely different. And I won't say why, whether it's because of their background, their education, their experience, but it's always so educational to pass the baton and let people listen to people as they share on a particular topic. One of the last ones I was at, we did one on Trayvon Martin. We've done days of dialogue around some other situations. And the police were at those dialogues. And they gave their perspective of policing situations, what they have to do, when they have to do it. And it's always informative to hear the process, the policy, their interest in making a difference in the community and creating bond in the community. So I also wanted to just add, it's not a contentious environment. Everyone is heard. We encourage everyone to listen. And what I've always found is even though people may go in thinking that it's going to be us against them, whatever we're talking about, it really winds up being us and us.
I think we have a caller.
Yes.
Let's pick up.
Hi.
Hi
Hello,
there.
caller. Thanks for calling in. We would love to hear your point of view in this conversation.
Hi. I would like to first of all thank you for sharing such powerful information, and I would like to know, will teenagers be able to benefit from this dialogue?
No doubt about it. Teenagers are encouraged. The Youth Justice Coalition is having one of the sessions, but young people are encouraged to attend all of the sessions because that youth voice is a very important voice to hear. They are experiencing things every day and they need to be listened to. Some of the problems with escalation of a dispute is because a person does not feel heard. So giving them the opportunity to be heard by police officers without people dictating to them, I think is a very constructive opportunity for young people throughout our region.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You are very
Caller,
welcome.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you for
And
the
stay
call.
tuned with us and follow this. What give us a website the
Futureofpolicing.org. Futureofpolicing.org. That's the
Future
website.
policing.
Future of Policing.
And we need your participation. And thank you so much for calling and stay with us.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
And that's a critical point, the youth, because because some of the young people now, the lines are so blurred in social media or what's right, what's wrong, which way to go, what not to do. All of this influence in media, TV, and I've learned being around a lot of the young people, some of the things that they are lost on is really and truly what is right and wrong. What do I do just
Right.
on a day-to-day basis?
Just what do I do?
Just what do I do?
I agree with you. And we're having the opportunity to interact with people throughout the nation on the 10th, August the 10th. Another webcast that Time Warner Cable is doing. And people can address questions that they have of a panel of people who are our local leaders who will be discussing the future of policing if you're unable to attend any of the sessions. So we expect nationally that people will want to weigh in, express their opinions. We're going to make every effort to ensure that comments can be viewed by others and questions can be addressed.
Now, is this hopes that I don't know about the Republican point of view, but is there hopes to get this dialogue, this conversation on the Democratic
Well, I
to
have
at least
to tell
raise
you,
the issue?
Personally, I think that the issue's already raised and people are having to respond to it. I'm not going in this particular effort to a particular partisan orientation. But one of our partners is the National Coalition on Dialogue and Deliberation. And these are folks throughout the country who have been trying to put dialogue on the national agenda about every conceivable thing, voting, for example,
Right,
and voting rights. But everything that we do, infrastructure investment, Obamacare,
You name it.
immigration reform, they're doing it throughout the country.
Yeah.
And they're doing it uniquely in each one of those settings throughout the country. So we have in Los Angeles Days of Dialogue.
I absolutely love that concept. Who came up with that concept of Days of Dialogue?
Days of Dialogue. That was George Regas, who was with All Saints Church.
Oh, it was George Regas.
Yes, he's
Oh,
the one who
wonderful.
I still remember him saying, we need a day of dialogue. And so he was the one who came up with that title for our efforts.
And I just think
all
it's
over.
brilliant because this is exactly where we are now. We've gotten to the point that so much anger is not getting us anywhere, so much fighting is not getting us where we want to be. And
I see it as a natural evolution of human interaction. We're
I see a
learning
shift.
how to do.
Yes, I see a shift in consciousness out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And being blessed enough to travel and being blessed enough to deal with media in different states, and I'm always on the phone with radio stations and stuff like that, and there is a shift in consciousness.
Yes.
And I think that wave basically is coming, bubbling up from the youth. The youth is crying out, and I
Yes.
think that many of us have the experience. We have the some of the knowledge and how to direct this and
Constructively.
constructively.
That's right.
Yes,
And
and maximize the benefit of that energy.
that is tremendous energy too. I
It's
wish
a
I
lot.
still had that energy. I have to tell.
Oh, you do. I'm looking at
But that energy is wonderful to have. We just have to provide some guidance and support so that they can direct it in the most constructive way possible.
Well, I think with me looking back in the community, and I remember being part owner, running a liquor store in the Inglewood there, and I remember where the consciousness just fell. You know, people's spirits was just so broken under the crack and coming out of the PCP era and out of these heavy designer drugs areas, and I clearly see where we are coming out of that into a new light and a new consciousness, and I think that the wave is here for us to get our surfboard and ride this wave and take it on into the to the surface. And I just love the work you guys are doing.
It's great work. I
just
have
love the
to
work
tell
you guys
you,
are doing.
I love doing the work. It is.
You can
so
it shows.
life-giving. Yes, it's so. I am retired. So I retired from the city
Oh,
after
you're
30
too young
years.
to be retired.
Well, you see what I'm doing in retirement. So this is
Working
what
hard, yes.
retirement is for me. You know.
So you did work for the city.
I worked for the city for 30 years, and I thought 30 years was about the time that it was time to then let that go, let that regular having to show up at a particular time and leave at a particular time. I could leave that alone and then move into my same interest, but into another setting. So
with a new spirit.
That's right. That's right. And didn't have to do those kind of battles that one has to do as a city employee. I could just make the work speak for itself.
Well, I can tell you, sitting here with the energy of Carolyn, and I watched her energy talk about this process and the future of that and the possibilities of that. And then sitting before you and feeling this energy, I can't even tell you how much you guys are bringing to me that is energizing me to get up off my butt to even look into these different areas and see what can I do to help. I'm always trying to help, and like most of us, sometimes we spread ourselves so thin.
Yes, it's easy to do.
Yeah, and sometimes, but at the same time, when I meet spirits like yourself, that'll pull the old guy back and say, wait a minute, this is a good direction right here. Put some energy over here.
Well, let me interject a thought also, because there's something you did, Larry, last year, I believe, when they had the riots in Baltimore or St. Louis, but one of the situations where a police officer was involved, and you went to a police station, 2 or 3 police stations in our local area, and you went to meet and speak to the police. Why don't you share with the audience what you did?
Yeah, I when I saw the pain, and I saw the pain of the community that was being feel that they were being neglected and abused, and then I saw some of the pain as an officer, because at that time in New York, 2 officers had been shot by a young man that the officer was sitting in their cars, and so I know that there was hurt and pain on both sides. So then I'm like, okay, what can I do? I can't just sit here and not at least extend my hand. So I went to the Marina Del Rey Sheriff Department and sit down and talk to them. They welcomed me with open arms, came out and hugged me. It just brings chills to my. I went to the Culver City Police Department, and the same thing. They gave me phone numbers and want to get involved with dialogue, and I still have their numbers and stuff. And then I went to the highway patrolman right there in Culver City, and then at coffee shops and stuff. And I would just speak to officers and ask them, how do you feel about what's going on? And walk up to them and ask them, how is your day today? And what are you feeling about a lot of this chaos? And then the demonization of the good officers, and then quite naturally there's some bad officers out there. Right. But that was me. Thank you for bringing it up. Walking into the police department, and I cannot tell you how many of them, both white, Hispanics, Asians, and black officers, came from behind the counter and literally hugged me with their guns and their gear on, and they didn't handcuff me. They actually gave me this big bear hug and appreciated me coming in. And I want to move forward with that and maybe perhaps tie it into some of the stuff that you guys are doing.
That would be wonderful. They are police officers, are members of our community.
Members of our community, yes.
We have given the responsibility to assist us with making our community safe and secure. But they are definitely members of our community.
Yes, they are.
And so there is no, I love the way that you put it, there's only us.
There's only us.
And you find through the dialogue process that their life experiences have been so varied, and they have come on the job, most of them, to really try to make the best contribution that they can to the community. They're not coming there to do harm to our communities. And they want to have that opportunity to be well respected, to help make their contribution as well.
Yeah. So. And one officer told me, I guess he's captain, he told me, he was very simple. It's very cliches, but it was so true. And he said, well, Mr. Yates, what is your goal at the end of your day? I said, well, my goal is to go home and just lay down and relax. And he said, that's what all of my officers want to do at the end of their shift. Do we have another phone call? Let's pick up and get this one more phone call.
Hi.
Well, hello. Hi. Welcome to the Larry Yatesasis Show. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. I wonder if it's too late to ask this question about for Avis Ridley Thomas. How do the police benefit from attending the dialogues? That's the question I have.
Great question. Great question. Thank you so much for asking it.
Okay, and also I saw your post that the show is on Twitter, and I couldn't quite get the link. So if someone could post the link on the site, then or email us, that would be great too. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. I'll take the answer off the air.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my experience is that police officers benefit by being given feedback and support by members of the community. They may begin to feel like their efforts are for naught, and you will see that people really appreciate when you have to call police officers. You really appreciate what they do when they arrive and help out in a situation that cannot otherwise be resolved. So people have a lot of affection for police officers many times, and police officers do appreciate hearing that people have appreciated their involvement when there had to be. They benefit also from being able to express their concerns about their work and how to do that better. Accountability is something that all of us, want to see in the resources that we expend. They benefit by being able to proudly report their activities on our behalf that they're doing. I remember one officer said, "Oh, you've got to show this video before the dialogue. It's the best video that the LAPD has ever done." He said that. So we wanted to look at it before we showed it, but what it showed was his efforts to work with young people in his particular division. So they had this, I think it was called the Explorers Camp, and you could see the children under his direction, that officer's direction. But he wanted to show that he really is involved in the community, and he really takes the responsibility of working with the young people of our community very seriously.
Well, one of the things that as I was talking to these different officers in the community, and more than one alluded to the fact that although that they have some officers that may not be quite in line, you have your bad apples in every bushel, but they're able to go and talk to those potential bad apples.
Yes.
The ones that you're having dialogue with, the ones that I sit and talk with, when they go back and tell them that the community is reaching out to us as the police department as part of the community, and that makes that is something that sends a vibration throughout the whole department. When a officer go back and say, well, these people came here just to say hello, just to say thank you, that sends an appreciation vibration through the whole department, and then that cause it to be less likely for one bad apple to start to form.
I think that's true. That's just like any other.
Just like any other.
That's right, human being.
Yes.
And when you spread good works, they have an impact. And so going to them and expressing appreciation on your part, I think, was just a wonderful thing to do as those officers had been killed. That's frightening. Nobody wants a society like that where people are executed, based on the job that they do.
I hate to cut it up because of the sake of time, but we can't live in this is a situation we cannot live in.
Right.
Yes.
We can't live in a police state where the bad officer are just out killing for the sake of killing.
Right.
And we can't live in a society where every potential criminal or suspect is willing to put a gun to shoot first and then run.
We cannot.
And we can't live in that.
No.
That's not where the nation. The country is better than that. We, as a nation, is better than that.
That's right.
We have to protect our officers, just the way our officers have to protect us.
That's right.
And it
we
is
all
a community.
have a responsibility.
Yes, it is. It's a community effort. And I want
Right.
to thank those officers that are open armed to me at Marina Del Rey, Culver City, and the highway patrolmen in Culver City
And
as
the
well.
Marina Del Rey officers, they're partnering to have the day at the church in
Community church.
Community church in on the 11th of
Yes.
of August. So again, futureofpolicing.org is where you get information about the sites throughout Los Angeles. And the organization throughout the country is the National Coalition on Dialogue and Deliberation.
And they
Carolyn,
can
we're down
tweet
to about
and
5
Twitter.
minutes.
They can tweet.
You can tweet hashtag Future of Policing. Our handle is at Days of Dialogue. We hope that you will send questions and concerns to us because we want this to be, given that we have a year, we've committed to do this for a year.
Yes.
We want this experience to be the most productive that it can be for our community.
Now get involved, people. Everybody talking about what can I do? Well, this is something that you can do. Grassroots, something that is promising, something that have very, very, very great possibilities. And as long as we follow through, but support Miss Wrigley Thomas on this process. And you might look up and see me around there somewhere. You know I'm a hound. I'm going to be looking for the camera, and I'll be right there in the mic. But, Carol, we got about 3-4 more minutes ago.
Okay.
So, please.
I just wanted to say that you can support this by tweeting. You can also come and attend an event. You can request that an event be at your location. If you have a location and you want to bring people in, then contact the Institute for Nonviolence or Days of Dialogue website, and there's a place that you can request a program. And there's more to come because it's over. The program is going to be carried forth over a year, and we'll be talking about this. And I know we'll have Avis Ridley Thomas back on this station to talk about the results of the week of the 11th, as well as what's coming forth. And I also wanted to share that from being in some of the steering committee meetings, one of the things I was touched by is that I remembered when I was growing up that they weren't called policemen. They were called peace officers. And they were my friends. And I grew up in a small town in New York where I knew the police officers who were the beat officers. I also grew up in Brooklyn, New York, which was a huge city, but there were beat officers who had a couple of blocks, and they were assigned to your block so you knew who they were. So I did not have a sense of fear about the people who were in uniform. There were some places I knew I shouldn't go because police officers were a little stronger. But what I found is that the idea of a police officer has changed over the years. And what we need is a new idea. So the future of policing is so appropriate right now. Not only do we need new tactics, new policies, new behaviors, but we need new attitudes and ways of committing to being a part of the community from all sides of the community, from the children, from the elders, the people in between. And we are here as a community. It's all about us together making a difference. Yes.
Yes, that's that we hit that brick wall there. So, Ms. Thomas, what I like to do, the way I like to end the show is this time went by so fast, didn't it?
Yes, it absolutely.
And so
is.
you got a
Thank
home
you
here.
so
You
much.
got to come back. Give us words of wisdom as we close the show, and we're going to go around the table here, starting with you.
Okay. Thank you. This is the 50th anniversary, August 11th, the day that we kick off, the 50th anniversary of the Watts Rebellion. And we still have a long way to go in establishing excellent public safety in our community here in Los Angeles and throughout the country. So I am delighted to be on the ground floor of helping make that happen by getting us to sit down with one another and work out these issues, even as our president is trying to negotiate a deal at the international level. We are here in Los Angeles on the street, in our churches, in our firehouses, at police stations, in our community organizations, to try and bring peace to our streets.
Bringing peace to our state.
Okay.
Carolyn, thank you so much. That's
welcome.
so beautifully stated. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Well, I will just say ditto to that, because my work is about peace and nonviolence, and this is a way to bring peace into our homes, peace into our communities, and peace within. Because when we can look up and see that we're being cared for, and the safety of our lives is being handled by a police officer, and not be in fear of who a police officer is, then I have inner peace.
I appreciate that. It's really not a lot I can add to that, but what I will say is that let us, as a community as a whole, whether it's Black, white, Asian, Hispanics, let us as a community as a whole stop functioning out of fear. Let's function from hope and the possibilities of what this nation can be. And remember, a nation can rise no higher than it elevates its woman. Thank you, Ms. Thomas
Thank
and
you
Carolyn,
very
for
much.
being here. We got to do this again. See you
All
next
right.
week.
All right.